Hello, my name is Matthew Papish, and this is the implementation of the LCD interface library for the RGB LyricNote project. So a few things I want to mention right off the bat are that I'm only going to be covering the interface for the RGB LyricNote project because this is just an example of how it can be used and applied to other projects, other Arduino projects anyways. And with that said, as well, I'm also going to say that I'm only going to be covering the lights folder because there's more to be shown on this RGB LyricNote project, and frankly, in order to convey how this library can be used, it can be done with just the one folder. So that's what I will be doing today. And so without further ado, we can quickly take a quick skim or a quick look over of the programming online, and we can see how everything's organized into namespaces. That's just a personal preference. I did that because I had a few files and folders that needed to be prepared ahead of time from maybe creating parameters and initializing those values for files, as long as storing files into folders and folders into parent folders. So with things needing to be prepared, I use namespaces. Okay, so moving on, if we quickly look at the RGB namespace, we can see how we have dynamically allocated files such as stripes and rainbow, and other ones as well. We can then see how we use the file setup function to essentially add the parameters to each one of these files. And then lastly, we then create an array of dynamically allocated files from polarized stripes, rainbows, and so on and so forth, which can be used elsewhere. Then in the lights folder namespace, we then have a folder called lights with the brackets in front of it. And then we have a function called folder setup that's then adding that array of dynamically allocated files from the RGB namespace to the this current folder. So by doing that, we've added parameters to files, and then we just added all those files to this one folder. And then in the base folder namespace, we are then adding all of its subfolders, such as the lights folder, to the main folder, known as RGB music, which can be seen in front of me. So with that said, and that's being done also through the folder setup function of that namespace. And then finally, in the setup function of the Arduino, all those file and folder setup functions are being called. Then the begin method of our instance of the LCD interface class is then being called, but we're passing in the dynamically allocated file for the main file, which is the RGB music, or let me rephrase that, sorry, the main folder, which is the RGB music folder. And then in the loop function, we're just constantly calling the interface method to continue to update the screen and then to also continue reading the encoder. And so now, if we take a look, this is my LCD in front of me, and this is my encoder, which would normally be in the casing of the project, but for purposes of this video and reasons outside of this video, I decided to take it out for convenience. And if I rotate counterclockwise, I can go down with the arrow. If I rotate clockwise, we can go up. If I can't go up, but I'm rotating clockwise, it actually pulls all the contents down. And if I can't go down, if I rotate counterclockwise, it pulls all the contents up. So it's a nice. It's personally one of my favorite things about this interface. It's a very subtle thing, but I find it kind of pleasing. But without further ado, if I click on the lights folder, we can open that up, and it will give me the back keyword should I want to go back to the previous folder, and then it gives me all the files that I previously mentioned, such as stripes. If I want to run a file, I can click on the file. If I wanted to disable the file, I can just click on it again. If I want to interface its parameters, I can double click on the file, and then it will open its parameters, where if I cycle through it, it will show me all of its parameters by clicking. So each time I click on the encoder, it's going to cycle through its parameters, which if we see online, and if we look right in front of me, we have green for 30, blue for 40, and then flow rate 10, and then red being 20. So these are what we told what we expected them to be. If I rotate clockwise, it increases the value, and if I rotate counterclockwise, it decreases the value. And while we're here, it's a good time to mention that you can use the set parameter resolution method of the LCD interface class to change what it changes by passing in a value 1, which is what it is by default, and increases or decreases by 1. I can give it 0.5 to increase or decrease by 0.5 or by 2 or whatever value I'd like, even pi, right? Or just so many digits of pi anyways. But anyways, that's how you can interface the parameters of a file. If I want to see when a file is running, I can use the getFileActive method, where if I provide a folder name and a file name, I can figure out is a file running or not. And then if I want to know if a file is running, and then if it's running, do something by using its parameters, and I want to access those parameters, I can use the getFileParameterData method, where I can figure out what that parameter is by providing a folder name, a file name, and a parameter name. And if I want to go out, I can just click back. So yeah, so this is a implementation of this library. If I click music, which I didn't show, but if I click it and I go inside of the folder, I have these bands here, which are files themselves. And I'm not going to really go into too much detail about what's going on here, but this will be for the RGB lyric notes music. But if I go back, it brings me back to the main folder again. So yeah, this is the implementation of this library, and I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I suppose that'll be it. Now, it's worth mentioning that you can use the methods located, or the public methods located on the individual objects, such as a file or a folder. You don't have to use strictly the methods for the LCD interface of the class. However, they're there to make it more convenient. But should you want more flexibility when programming, you can just dereference, like maybe the list of files or pointers, or the list of folder pointers of any of these other classes, if that's easier. I know I did that in my programming as well, but either way you do it, this library should be pretty useful. And I thank you for watching.